The internet, you know, is just the tip of the iceberg. Beneath it lies something else, a place where hidden forums, encrypted messages, and untraceable transactions create a world with no rules. The dark web isn't just a tool for hackers or criminals, it's a breeding ground for nightmares. Some people have dared to explore it, and their stories? They are nothing short of horrifying. These are true dark web horror stories from Reddit, told by those who barely escaped. Whispers in anonymous chat rooms, strange sights that won't let you leave, and encounters with the truly unexplainable. If you think you're safe behind a screen, think again. Listen closely, but remember some doors should never be opened. Let's begin. I have always been the kind of person who needs answers, who cannot let go of something once it burrows into my mind. Maybe that is why I could never accept what happened to my older brother, Daniel. He was 23, 2 years older than me, and the last time I saw him, he was sitting at his desk, headphones on, staring at his laptop screen with a frozen expression. He was always into weird things, obsessed with mysteries, fascinated by the dark corners of the internet. But that night, something was different. He barely responded when I knocked on his door, just mumbled that he was busy. The next morning, he was gone. His phone, his wallet, even his shoes were still in his room. The police searched everywhere, questioned everyone, but there was nothing. No leads, no clues, just an empty space where he used to be. It ate away at me for months. The not knowing. People told me to move on, that sometimes people just disappear, but I could not accept that. It was nearly a year later when I found it. A link buried deep in an old forum thread that Daniel had bookmarked. The title was nonsense, just a string of random letters and numbers. But when I clicked it, the screen turned black for a moment, before a video started playing. The footage was grainy, low quality, the kind of thing you would expect from an old VHS tape. It showed a dark room, dimly lit by a single flickering bulb. A wooden chair sat in the middle of the room, and someone was sitting in it, their head slumped forward. My heart slammed against my ribs when I recognized the figure, the clothes, the posture, even the way their hair curled slightly at the ends. It was Daniel. He was alive. I leaned in closer, barely breathing as the video continued. The camera zoomed in slowly, the sound of static growing louder. Daniel lifted his head. His eyes were wide and bloodshot, his mouth moving but no words coming out. His lips trembled, as if he was trying to say something, but then his expression changed. His face twisted into something unnatural, his jaw opening wider than it should have been possible. A sound came through the speakers, something between a distorted scream and a deep gurgling noise. I yanked my headphones off, my hands shaking. The video kept playing. Daniel's head snapped to the side, his neck bending at an impossible angle. A shadow moved behind him, a tall, thin shape that seemed to stretch and shift, like it was not fully solid. I wanted to stop the video. I wanted to turn it off, but my body would not listen. The screen glitched, and suddenly there was a close-up of Daniel's face. His eyes were black voids, his mouth stretched into a jagged grin. He spoke, but the words came out in a distorted, inhuman voice. "You should not have watched." My vision blurred for a second, and when I blinked, the video was gone. The web page had disappeared, leaving only an error message. I sat there, frozen, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. My skin felt too tight, my stomach twisted into knots. I could still hear that voice in my head, echoing in the back of my skull. "You should not have watched." My bedroom felt too dark, the shadows in the corners stretching farther than they should. My phone buzzed on my desk, making me flinch. It was an unknown number. With shaking hands, I answered. Silence. Then a deep, ragged breath. "You saw him, didn't you?" The voice was neither male nor female, just a hollow whisper that crawled under my skin. My throat was too dry to speak. I hung up, but the second I did, My screen lit up again. A new message. A video attachment. I did not want to open it. Every part of me screamed to delete it, to throw my phone away, to pretend none of this was happening. But I could not. My fingers moved on their own, tapping the video. It was another recording. This time, the camera faced a hallway lined with doors. At the end of the hallway was a single chair. Daniel was sitting in it again. Only this time, he was looking directly at the camera. His lips moved, forming words that had no sound. My breath hitched. Behind him, the shadows pulsed, like they were alive. A tall shape emerged, its head tilting unnaturally to one side. It had no face, just a smooth stretch of pale skin. It leaned down over Daniel, long fingers curling around his shoulders. Then Daniel did something that made my blood run cold. He lifted his hand, palm facing the camera, and pointed, not at the screen, at me. The lights in my room flickered. My monitor went black. The only light came from my phone screen. The video looped, Daniel pointing, the thing behind him shifting closer. I scrambled up, my breath coming in short gasps. My bedroom door was open. I did not leave it open. A creak echoed through the hallway. Slow footsteps. My pulse hammered in my ears. I grabbed my phone and backed up to the wall, my mind screaming at me to run, to get out of the house. But my legs would not move. The video stopped. A new message popped up. It was just one word. Open. My heart nearly stopped. Another creak. The footsteps were right outside my door now. I reached for the doorknob with a trembling hand, holding my breath. I wanted to believe this was all in my head, that I was just paranoid, that the stress and grief had finally broken me. But then I saw it. The shadow stretching under the door, the shape of long, thin fingers pressing against the wood. I did not wait. I turned and threw myself out the window, hitting the ground hard. My ankle twisted painfully, but I barely felt it. I ran. I ran until my lungs burned, until the house was just a distant shape behind me. I never went back. The police found nothing. No evidence. No sign that anyone had been in my room. My laptop and phone were wiped clean. They told me I must have imagined it, that grief plays tricks on the mind. But I know what I saw. I know what I heard. And I know one thing for certain. That video was never meant to be found. I was never the type to believe in ghost stories or internet myths. But looking back now, I wish I had taken the warnings more seriously. My name is Ethan, and I was 26 at the time, working night shifts as a freelance coder. It started as curiosity, a way to escape the boredom of my repetitive life. I spent hours on tech forums, diving into obscure parts of the internet, fascinated by the idea of hidden worlds beneath the surface web. That was how I first heard about the game. It had no official name, no developers, no website, just whispers in underground chat rooms where people spoke in riddles and half-truths. The challenge was simple: follow the clues, decode the messages, and progress through each level. But the warnings were clear. Once you start, you cannot stop. It began with an anonymous message in my inbox, an invite sent in a language that looked like gibberish at first glance. I should have ignored it, but I was too deep into the mystery to turn away. I ran the text through a cipher, and a URL appeared. It was a crude, outdated web page with nothing but a black screen and a blinking cursor. A prompt appeared. Are you ready to play? Without thinking, I typed yes. The screen flickered, then a video loaded. It was low-quality, grainy footage of a dimly lit room. A person sat in the center, completely still, their face obscured by shadows. There was no movement, no sound, but something about it felt wrong, like I was watching something I was not supposed to see. The video ended abruptly, replaced by a single word: continue. As I clicked forward, Strange things started happening. My laptop glitched. Random pop-ups filled my screen, but there was no way to exit. The game had embedded itself into my system. Each level brought a new challenge, encrypted puzzles, coordinates that led to eerie locations on Google Maps, recordings of distorted voices whispering in a language I could not understand. Then, level 5 changed everything. My webcam light turned on by itself. I panicked, trying to shut it off, but the game responded with a message. "We see you now." A new video loaded, but this time, it was not a pre-recorded clip. It was a live feed of my own room. My heart stopped. I spun around, expecting to see someone standing behind me, but there was nothing. I slammed my laptop shut, but the sound continued, a low, distorted breathing filling the room. I unplugged the router, yanked the battery from my laptop, but it did not matter. My phone buzzed. A new message appeared, unknown number, do not run. I felt a cold sweat break over my skin. I was being watched, not just through my screen, but in real life. I checked my windows, my door. Everything was locked, but paranoia clawed at my mind. I barely slept that night. The next day, I took my laptop to a friend who was more experienced with cybersecurity. He scanned it, his face growing pale as he muttered something about deep tracking scripts, something he had never seen before. It was not just monitoring my activity, it was pulling data from my entire network. My camera, my microphone, even my smart devices were compromised. I told him about the game, and he refused to hear more, his hands trembling as he wiped my laptop clean. "Do not ever go back," he said. But it was too late. The messages kept coming. My phone rang at odd hours. Silence on the other end. But sometimes, I could hear breathing. My home Wi-Fi would flicker. My smart television turned on by itself, always displaying that same dimly lit room. One night, I woke up to find my laptop open on my desk. The words typed on screen. "We told you not to stop." The paranoia became unbearable. I stopped leaving my apartment, covered my webcam with tape, but I knew it did not matter. They were already inside. The final message came a week later. My phone vibrated with a video attachment. Against my better judgment, I played it. It was security footage. Not just any footage. It was me, sitting in my apartment, staring at my laptop. But the timestamp showed something impossible. The video was from 2 minutes into the future. A wave of nausea hit me as I stared at the screen, watching myself in real time. Then, I saw it. A figure standing in the corner of my room, watching me. I spun around, but the room was empty. The video kept playing, and in it, the figure stepped closer, moving toward me with slow, deliberate movements. My stomach twisted as I watched myself in the footage, completely unaware. Then, just before the timer caught up to the present moment, the screen glitched. A final message appeared. "Look behind you." I do not remember much after that. Just darkness, a sharp ringing in my ears, a suffocating sense of dread. When I woke up, I was lying on my bedroom floor, my laptop smashed to pieces. The game was gone, wiped from existence, as if it had never been there. But I know it was real. I still see things in the corner of my eye, hear whispers when my room is silent. The dark web is not just a collection of hidden sites. It is something else entirely. Something alive, watching, waiting. And once you open that door, it never truly closes. I was never the kind of person who took risks. I liked my life simple, predictable, and quiet. But boredom does strange things to the mind. It whispers bad ideas when the night is long and empty. That was how I found myself on a dark web chat one night, my laptop screen glowing in the dark like a cold blue eye. I was 23, living alone in a small apartment, my only company being the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic. I had always been curious about the darker corners of the internet, but I had never actually dared to explore them. That night, curiosity got the better of me. I had read about these chats where people discussed things you would never hear about in the real world. Crimes, secrets, strange experiences. I thought it would be nothing more than twisted stories shared by faceless strangers. I was wrong. At first, it was exactly what I expected. A handful of anonymous users talking about unsettling things. Some shared urban legends. Others claimed to have committed crimes. It was disturbing, but in a distant way, like watching a horror movie. Then someone posted a link. It was just a string of random letters and numbers, followed by a single sentence. Join if you are ready to see the truth. I hesitated, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. Something about it felt different, more deliberate. A small voice in my head told me to close the laptop and forget about it, but my hands moved before my brain could stop them, and I clicked the link. The screen went black for a moment before loading a new chat room. There were no usernames here, just messages appearing in real time. The first thing I noticed was that everyone seemed to be talking about me. The messages poured in rapidly. Welcome. We have been waiting for you. Finally, you are here. We see you. My stomach twisted. My heart pounded against my ribs. How did they know I had joined? I had not typed anything yet. I tried to leave the chat, but the exit button was gone. My cursor refused to move. The screen flickered, and then a new message appeared. Look outside. My breath hitched. My apartment was on the 3rd floor. There was no way anyone could be outside my window, but against my better judgment, I turned my head. For a moment, there was nothing but darkness beyond the glass, and then I saw it. A face, or something close to a face. It was pale, too pale, with eyes that were too round and too black, as if they were nothing but holes. It was smiling, a wide, stretching grin that did not belong on any human face. I froze, my pulse hammering in my ears. My fingers trembled as I looked back at the screen. Another message had appeared. Do not move. I had never felt fear like that before. It was paralyzing, sinking deep into my bones. My mind raced. Was this a prank? A cruel joke played by some hacker? My hands shook as I reached for my phone, but before I could dial, another message appeared. Call anyone, and you will regret it. I had never felt so trapped. The thing at my window did not move. It just watched, that horrible grin never fading. The chat continued, new messages flooding the screen. They talked about me, my apartment, my life, things that no one should know. They mentioned the color of my couch, the book lying on my nightstand, the exact number of steps from my bed to my kitchen. My stomach twisted as realization set in. They were not guessing. They knew. Somehow, they knew everything. The messages became more demanding. Open the window. Let us in. We want to see you. My hands clenched into fists. My entire body was trembling. No, I typed, my fingers barely able to press the keys. The chat went silent. For a long moment, there was nothing. And then a single reply appeared. You already have. The blood drained from my face. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. The thing outside my window was still there, still grinning, but something felt different. It took me a moment to realize what it was. The reflection. The window should have reflected my room back at me, but it did not. It was only black, empty. I turned slowly, my skin crawling, my breath caught in my throat. There was someone standing in the corner of my room, tall, impossibly thin, with hollow eyes and a mouth that stretched too wide. I could not scream. I could not move. The screen flickered one last time, and the final message appeared. Welcome home. I do not remember what happened next. I woke up the next morning on the floor, my laptop still open, but the chat was gone, as if it had never existed. My body felt heavy, my mind foggy, but the worst part was the feeling that something had changed. The apartment felt different. It felt wrong. The air was thick, heavy, as if someone was still there, watching. I tried to convince myself it was a dream, a hallucination brought on by exhaustion and fear. But deep down, I knew better. The messages, the thing in my room, the face at my window, it was all real. And I was no longer alone. I never saw it again. Not directly, but I feel it. In the corners of my vision, in the silence of the night, in the flickering shadows on my walls. I feel it waiting, watching, and I know that one day it will step forward again, and this time I will not wake up. They say curiosity is what killed the cat, but in my case, it did something much worse. I was always the kind of guy who liked to explore the forbidden corners of the internet, a thrill seeker without ever leaving my desk. My name is Jason. I am 26 years old, and I have always had a restless mind. Boredom is something I cannot stand, and I guess that is what led me to the dark web in the first place. I never had any intention of doing anything illegal, just watching from the shadows, seeing the things that were not meant for most eyes. It started as a game, a way to test the limits of my courage, but the night I found that website, everything changed. It was past midnight, and my apartment was silent except for the low hum of my computer. The room was dark, the only light coming from my screen as I browsed aimlessly. That is when I found it. At first glance, it looked like a generic forum, nothing too flashy, just a plain black background with red text. The title at the top read, "The Disciples of Justice." It did not sound sinister, but the tagline underneath made my stomach twist. It said, "Delivering justice when the law fails." My heart pounded as I clicked through the pages, and it became clear what I was looking at. This was a site offering hitman services, complete with testimonials from anonymous clients who claimed their problems had been solved swiftly and efficiently. Some of the posts were disturbingly detailed, talking about accidents staged so perfectly that even the families of the victims believed it was fate. A deep part of me knew I should close the page, delete my browsing history, and pretend I never saw it. But my fingers betrayed me. Before I could stop myself, I typed a message into the anonymous inquiry box. It was a joke, just a dumb test to see if the site was real. I wrote, "What are your rates for something personal?" And I hit send. The response came almost instantly. A simple message that read, "We do not discuss business with ghosts. Provide a name and a contact." My breath caught in my throat. This was not some fake scam. It was too precise, too careful. I should have stopped there, but I had already gone too far. Without thinking, I replied with a fake name and an old email I barely used. For the next 5 minutes, nothing happened. Then, a new message appeared. "Are you sure this is what you want, Jason?" My blood ran cold. I had never given them my real name. My hands trembled as I stared at the screen, my mind racing for explanations. Maybe my VPN had failed. Maybe my browser had a vulnerability. But nothing explained the sheer speed at which they had found out who I was. Then another message appeared. "Do not worry. We already know everything about you. We just need to confirm. Do you want the service?" I slammed my laptop shut, my breath coming in quick, panicked bursts. I felt like something was watching me through the screen. I did not sleep that night. Every sound in my apartment felt amplified. The creak of the pipes, the distant hum of a car passing outside. Even the faint rustling of the trees seemed sinister. I told myself it was all in my head, but when I checked my email the next morning, there was a new message. It was from an address I did not recognize, with no subject line. Against my better judgment, I opened it. The email contained a single sentence: "You should not play with fire." Attached to it was a picture. It was a photo of me, sitting at my desk the night before, staring at my screen. The angle was impossible. It was taken from inside my apartment. I felt a chill crawl down my spine as I turned my head slowly toward my window. The blinds were shut. They had been shut all night. My hand shook as I grabbed my phone and dialed the police. I did not know what I would even tell them, that I found a hitman website, and now I was being watched, that someone had broken into my apartment without a trace. When the dispatcher answered, I could barely form the words. I need help. Someone is watching me. But before I could say more, the line went dead. My phone screen showed no service, even though I had never had reception issues before. That was when the knock came. 3 slow, deliberate knocks at my front door. My entire body went rigid. I live on the 7th floor of an apartment building, and the hallway outside my door is always dead silent. I stood frozen, listening, my heart hammering in my chest. Then a voice came through the door. Jason, we need to talk. It was calm, friendly even, but something about it made my skin crawl. I did not answer. I did not move. The person outside did not knock again. Instead, they slid something under my door, a thin, black envelope. I waited until I was sure they were gone before I picked it up with shaking hands. Inside was a single sheet of paper with one line written on it. If you report this, we will know. I spent the rest of the day locked in my apartment, my mind unraveling. I checked every inch of my place for hidden cameras, but found nothing. I paced back and forth, staring at my laptop like it was cursed. Then, just as the sun was setting, I heard another knock, lighter this time, almost playful. My stomach churned as I crept toward the door. I did not even need to look through the peephole to know someone was standing there, waiting. I do not know how long I stood there before I heard it. The sound of footsteps retreating down the hall, slow and deliberate. I pressed my ear against the door, listening. Then, just as I was about to pull away, a whisper came through the crack. See you soon. I fell back, scrambling away from the door as my blood turned to ice. That was the last straw. I grabbed my keys and ran. I did not stop until I reached the nearest police station, breathless and wild-eyed. When I told them my story, they exchanged glances, and one of the officers sighed. Then, in a voice that was far too calm, he said, "We know about the site. You were never in danger. It was an operation. You were flagged the moment you visited." My heart pounded as I tried to process his words. It was a sting. But how did they know my name so fast? How did they have pictures from inside my apartment? The officer just shook his head. He told me they had been tracking illegal activities on the dark web for years, that they had software that could trace and monitor visitors without them knowing. He said it was meant to catch criminals. But sometimes, people like me got too curious. I asked about the messages, the knocks, the whisper. He gave me a long look before answering. "We never sent anyone to your apartment, Jason." My stomach dropped. I wanted to believe he was lying, that it was all just an elaborate scare tactic to keep me from going back. But deep down, I knew. Something else had been watching me that night, something that was not part of their operation. I left the station with more questions than answers, but one thing was clear. I had walked too close to the edge of something far bigger and far darker than I had ever imagined, and I would never be the same again. I never thought a single mistake would cost me my entire life. It started with something harmless, or at least, that is what I told myself. I was 26, working as a freelance graphic designer, spending most of my nights glued to my laptop in my tiny apartment. I was the kind of person who loved the internet, the endless rabbit holes, the late-night curiosity that often led me to strange corners of the web. That is where it all began, with a simple curiosity about the dark web. I had always heard stories about it, how people traded illegal goods, hired hitmen, or even worse, but I never actually believed it was real. I thought it was exaggerated, a myth for the naive. One night, after too many energy drinks and the kind of boredom that makes you reckless, I downloaded a Tor browser and started exploring. The forums were the first thing that caught my attention. Deep discussions about things I had no business knowing. I barely understood half of what I was reading, but there was a thrill in just being there, like peeking into a world I was never meant to see. And then I found it. A site that claimed to sell secrets, information about anyone for the right price. My stomach twisted as I scrolled through the offers. Full names, addresses, medical records, things no one should have access to. It felt wrong, but my curiosity was stronger. I typed in my own name, just to see, just to check if it was real. My heart pounded as I hit enter. Nothing could have prepared me for what happened next. The screen flickered, and for a moment, I thought my internet had cut out. Then a chat window popped up. Someone was typing. "You should not have done that." The message sent a chill down my spine. Before I could react, my webcam light flickered on. I slammed my laptop shut, breathing heavily. It had to be a coincidence, a bug, something explainable. But then my phone vibrated. A new email. No subject, no sender. Just a single attachment labeled "Look." My hands trembled as I tapped it open. It was a photo of me, taken just seconds ago through my webcam. My stomach dropped. My mind raced. I had been careful. I thought I had covered my tracks, used a VPN. But someone was watching me. Someone new. I stared at the screen, my reflection staring back at me. My face pale, my eyes wide with fear. Another email. This time it was a link. My pulse hammered as I clicked it. A live stream. The feed was dark at first. Then it flickered. It was my apartment. My room. The very place I was sitting in. I jolted up, looking around, but I was alone. The camera angle shifted, moving unnaturally, like someone controlling it remotely. My hands were clammy as I reached for my laptop, trying to shut it down. Another message appeared. "Do not touch it." My body locked up. I felt exposed, naked in my own home. Another email. A list of every password I had ever used. My bank accounts, my work logins, my social media, all of it. My breathing was ragged now. The next message came fast. "Send me a video, something private, or I will take everything." My stomach twisted into knots. They wanted leverage, blackmail. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. My brain screamed at me to run, to unplug everything, but I knew it would not matter. They had me. They had everything. The thought of giving in, of letting them win, made my skin crawl. I had to think. I had to do something. Another email, this time with an attachment. A video. My blood ran cold as I opened it. It was a recording of my bedroom. From last night, I had been asleep, unaware that someone had been watching, recording, storing every second. My throat tightened. How long had they been inside my devices? Another email. I have all of it. Every conversation, every secret, every site you have visited. One click, and everyone will know. My hands were shaking now. The screen blurred as tears welled in my eyes. There was no escape. Another message. One last chance. Send me what I want, or I will destroy you. I snapped. My fear turned into anger. I typed fast, my fingers flying over the keyboard. I called their bluff. I wrote back, "You will not do it. If you wanted to, you would have already." Silence. No response. Minutes passed. Then the feed cut off. The emails disappeared. One by one, they vanished from my inbox, as if they had never existed. My laptop shut down on its own, the screen going black. My phone reset itself. Everything wiped clean. My heart pounded in my ears as I sat there, staring into the void of my screen. And then, the final message, a single line, "You got lucky, do not come back." And just like that, they were gone. But I was not relieved. I was not safe. Because I knew, deep down, that they were still out there, watching, waiting. And if they wanted to, they could come back any time. Because once you step into the dark, it never really lets you go. I never considered myself a thrill seeker. I was a journalist, 29 years old, more interested in exposing corruption than chasing ghost stories. My work had earned me a reputation for digging into places others would rather avoid, but it was never about danger for me. It was about the truth. That is what led me to the darkest corner of the internet, a place where people whispered about a website that was more than a myth. It was called Rent a Hitman, a name that almost sounded too ridiculous to be real. But the deeper I dug, the more disturbing the truth became. At first, I assumed it was some kind of joke, an elaborate prank designed to scare off curious minds. But what I found was a sophisticated network, a twisted service that allowed desperate people to request the unthinkable. Most shocking of all, those being targeted had no idea they were on a list. The worst part? Some of those contracts were being carried out. It started like any other investigation. I spent weeks tracking forum posts, hidden links, and encrypted messages that led to the website. It was simple, too simple for comfort. You filled out a form, entered a name, and within days, someone would respond with a confirmation. There was no elaborate coding, no secret passcodes. It was just there. It felt wrong, like staring at something I was never meant to see. I created a fake request, entering the name of an imaginary person, just to see what would happen. Within hours, I received an email. The message was chilling in its professionalism, confirming the request and stating that action would be taken soon. But what shook me to my core was the attachment. It was a photo of the person I had made up, a real person, standing in front of an apartment complex, looking directly at the camera, unaware that they had just been marked for death. My hands shook as I clicked through the images. There were more. Different angles, surveillance shots. Someone had been watching them long before I entered their name. I panicked, shutting my laptop so fast it nearly cracked. My first thought was that I had been caught, that someone knew what I was doing. I paced my apartment, my mind racing with possibilities. Maybe it was a coincidence. Maybe someone with that name really existed, and I had unknowingly chosen a real person. That thought was even worse. I needed to warn them. I had to find out who they were before it was too late. But how? I did not even know where to start. That night, I barely slept, every sound outside my window making me jump. My phone vibrated at 3 a.m. A new email. I hesitated before opening it. There was no text, only another image. This time, it was me. A photo taken from across the street, from a window that overlooked my apartment. I was sitting at my desk, staring at my laptop. My blood turned to ice. I wanted to call someone, the police, anyone. But what would I say? That I was snooping around a murder-for-hire website, and now I was being watched? It sounded insane. I forced myself to stay calm, analyzing every possible scenario. Maybe it was a warning. Maybe if I stopped now, they would leave me alone. But if I stopped, that meant someone out there would die. I could not live with that. I stayed up, backing up everything I had found, sending it to a few trusted colleagues with instructions to go public if anything happened to me. If they were going to silence me, I would make sure it was not easy. The next day, I left my apartment, feeling eyes on me every step of the way. I went to the police, showed them the images, the emails, the website. They took notes, asked questions, but I could tell they were skeptical. I was dismissed with a promise that someone would look into it. That night, I received another message. This time, it was a video. I debated whether to watch it. Every instinct screamed at me to delete it. to pretend none of this had ever happened, but I had already come too far. I played it, my breath catching in my throat as the screen flickered to life. It was grainy, nighttime footage of a man sitting alone in his living room. He looked familiar. My stomach dropped when I realized it was the man from the photos, the one I had accidentally marked for death. He was watching television, completely unaware of the dark figure standing just outside his window. The camera zoomed in slowly. The figure lifted a phone. A text appeared on the man's screen. He picked it up, reading something, his expression shifting from confusion to fear. Then the video cut to black. My phone buzzed. A new message. This time, it was an address. My address. I did not sleep. I did not move. I sat frozen, waiting for the inevitable. The hours stretched, every creak in my apartment sending my heart into my throat. By dawn, nothing had happened. Maybe it was a bluff, a final warning to back off. But I knew better. I packed a bag and left, disappearing into a different city, a different life. I deleted everything, destroyed my laptop, erased every trace of my identity. I never went back. I never saw my apartment again. But sometimes, in the dead of night, I feel it. The weight of unseen eyes, the certainty that somewhere out there, my name is still on that list, and I know one day they will come to collect. I used to think the internet was just a tool, a place where you could find anything if you searched hard enough. But after what happened last year, I see it as something else entirely. I am 29 years old, a cybersecurity analyst by profession, and for the longest time, my job was simple: find security flaws, patch them, and keep threats away. I was never the kind of guy to go looking for trouble. I kept my head down, did my job, and never crossed any lines. But curiosity is a dangerous thing, and when I stumbled across the name of a hacker group known as the Shroud, I made the mistake of wanting to know more. I had heard whispers about them before, a faceless entity lurking in the deepest corners of the dark web, an organization that thrived on secrets, extorting the rich and powerful, forcing them to pay in cryptocurrency unless they wanted their worst sins exposed to the world. What intrigued me was that no one seemed to know how they operated or how they managed to obtain such classified information. Some claimed they had access to government backdoors. Others believed they were more than just a group of hackers, something far worse, something inhuman. I should have left it alone, but I did not. I was too eager to prove myself, to dig deeper than anyone else had before, and that is how I ended up on a site that should not have existed. It was not flashy like you would expect from some Hollywood portrayal of a hacker network. No skulls, no neon text, just a plain black page with a single line of code running in a continuous loop. At first, I thought it was broken, some abandoned relic buried deep in the dark web. But when I tried to leave, my browser froze, and a message appeared in red text. It said, "You are now part of the ledger." Asterisk, asterisk, my screen flickered, and before I could react, my webcam turned on. I saw my own face staring back at me, frozen in shock, and then, just like that, the site closed, leaving nothing behind. I ran every security check I could think of, wiped my system clean, but something felt off. I told myself it was paranoia, that I had imagined it, but then the emails started coming. At first, they were just random strings of numbers and letters, meaningless to the average person, but I recognized the patterns. They were encryption keys, but not just any keys. They matched the hashes used by some of the most classified databases in the world. Government agencies, major corporations, banks, all listed in a sequence as if someone was giving me the keys to the kingdom. I did not dare use them, but the moment I tried to delete the emails, my phone rang. No caller ID, no sound on the other end, just a single automated message that whispered, You cannot erase the ledger. Asterisk, asterisk. I stopped sleeping after that. Every night, my computer would turn on by itself, screens flickering with lines of code I did not recognize, files appearing and disappearing, as if someone was rewriting reality right in front of me. My bank accounts were drained, my personal files rewritten with documents I had never seen before, confidential reports tied to people I did not know. It felt like I was being framed for something far bigger than I could understand. I tried reaching out to my contacts, but every message came back undelivered. My social media accounts vanished overnight. My phone wiped itself clean. And then, the final straw, a package arrived at my doorstep. No return address, just a plain black envelope with a single USB drive inside. I did not want to plug it in, but curiosity got the best of me. The moment it booted up, a video file played. It was grainy, night vision footage of a dimly lit room. At first, I thought it was empty, but then the camera panned to the corner, and I saw myself. Not a recording of me, not some old footage, but me, sitting in real time, staring at the screen just as I was in that moment. I turned my head, my real head, to look behind me, and the chair in the video creaked, as my doppelganger did the same. That was when I noticed the timestamp. It was 10 seconds ahead of my current time. I watched as my future self slowly turned back to the screen, lifted a hand, and pointed behind me. My body went cold. I did not want to look, but I had to. The moment I turned, my power cut out. The entire apartment went dark, and in that silence, I swear, I heard breathing, deep, ragged, right behind me. I do not remember what happened after that. Maybe I blacked out. Maybe something made me forget. But when I woke up, I was in my bed, my computer wiped clean, the USB drive gone. I thought it was over until I checked my phone. There was a single message waiting for me. No number, no sender, just 3 words. The ledger remembers. Asterisk, asterisk. I quit my job after that, moved cities, changed my name, but it did not matter. Wherever I go, the messages follow. Random strings of numbers appearing in my inbox, my reflection lagging just a second behind when I look in the mirror. The feeling of being watched, even in an empty room. I know what they are doing. They are waiting, letting me live in fear, because that is the real currency of the dark web. Not money, not power, but fear. A debt that cannot be repaid. A ledger that never forgets. I always thought horror stories were just stories, the kind you hear from friends during late-night conversations, or see in cheap horror movies that never quite feel real. But what happened to me was not just a story. It was something that still haunts me every time I see the glow of my laptop screen in a dark room. My name is Daniel, and I was 24 years old when I stumbled upon something I was never supposed to see. I was the kind of guy who spent too much time online, a tech enthusiast who enjoyed digging into the weird corners of the internet, finding obscure forums, and reading about things that were more fiction than reality. I was not a hacker, but I knew enough to navigate places that most people avoided. That was how I found the website, the one that changed everything. It was not one of those flashy, obviously illegal dark websites people imagine. It was simple, plain black, with a white text header that read live feeds. No descriptions, no explanations, just a list of links labeled with numbers. I hesitated before clicking the first one. The screen went black for a second. Then a grainy, low-quality video feed popped up. It was a bedroom, dimly lit, a small lamp casting a faint glow on the bed. Someone was sleeping, their back turned to the camera. I watched for a few seconds, my stomach twisting as I realized what this was. It was a live feed from someone's webcam. They had no idea they were being watched. I clicked another link, and this time it was an office. A man sitting at his desk, typing away on his computer. Another click. A living room where an old woman sat watching television. My chest tightened. This was real. These were real people, completely unaware that they were being watched by whoever found this site. My curiosity should have ended there, but it did not. I scrolled through the endless list, clicking on feed after feed, each one worse than the last. A child's nursery, a public bathroom, a woman brushing her hair in front of her vanity mirror. My skin crawled as I backed out, closing the feeds one by one, feeling more and more sick. And then I saw it. The last link on the page was different. It did not have a number like the others. Instead, it was labeled with my IP address. I froze. My mind raced, trying to convince me it was a coincidence, a glitch, maybe a mistake in the coding. But I knew better. My hands trembled as I clicked the link. My breath caught in my throat as the screen loaded. The image was dark at first, grainy and difficult to make out. Then, as my eyes adjusted, I felt my stomach drop. It was my room, my desk, my chair, my bed slightly visible in the corner, and sitting right there, in front of the screen, was me. It was live. I was looking at myself in real time, staring at the screen, watching myself watch. My blood turned ice cold as a message appeared in the chat box below the feed. It read, "Why did you click on this?" I could not breathe. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, but I had no idea what to type. My webcam light was off. I knew it was. There was no way anyone could be watching me. No way this feed could exist. And then, in the video, I saw something move. At first, I thought it was my own reflection, some kind of lag or glitch, but then I saw it again. Behind me, in the corner of my room, a shadow. My breath hitched as I turned around so fast my chair nearly tipped over. The corner was empty, nothing but my dresser, and the faint outline of my closet door slightly ajar. I turned back to the screen, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. The shadow was still there, unmoving, just standing in the corner, watching me. Another message popped up, "Do not turn around again." Every hair on my body stood on end. My hands were shaking so violently, I could barely keep them on the keyboard. I reached for my laptop, ready to slam it shut, to unplug it, to throw it across the room if I had to. But before I could, the video feed flickered. For a split second, the shadow moved closer. The screen glitched again. Closer. The next time it flickered, it was right behind my chair. And then the feed cut to black. I do not remember shutting my laptop, but I must have, because the next thing I knew, I was standing in the middle of my room, panting like I had just run a marathon. My webcam was still off. My room was still empty, but I could not shake the feeling that I was not alone. I packed my things that night. I left my apartment and never went back. I did not tell anyone why. How could I? Who would believe me? Even now, years later, I do not keep a webcam on my laptop. I cover my phone camera with tape. I avoid the deep corners of the internet. But sometimes, when I am alone, when the room is dark and my screen casts that eerie glow, I swear I can still feel it, watching. I always thought the worst thing that could happen online was getting hacked or scammed, but I never imagined my face would end up on places I never even visited. My name is Daniel. I am 24, and I work as a freelance photographer, which means my social media is filled with pictures of places I have traveled to, moments I have captured, and sometimes selfies. I was always cautious about what I posted, always making sure my personal life stayed separate from my online presence. But that did not matter in the end. It started one night when I received a strange email with no subject, just a link. Normally, I ignore things like that, but this email had my name in the sender's address, almost like it came from me. Curiosity got the better of me, and I clicked. I wish I never had. The page that opened was a forum, dark and empty, except for a single post, with a title that made my stomach drop. It was my full name followed by the words, "Leaked Collection." My hands shook as I clicked on it, and what I saw made my blood run cold. Pictures of me, dozens of them, but they were not just my usual photos. Some were from my Instagram, but others were different, invasive, as if someone had been watching me. There were images of me asleep in my bed, walking down my street, even sitting in my living room, unaware. I felt sick. I checked the comments below, expecting people to call it fake, but instead, they were excited. They were talking about me like I was an object, discussing what they would like to see next, some asking for videos, others sharing links to places where these photos were spreading. My face was on sites I never wanted to imagine, places that should not exist. I slammed my laptop shut, heart pounding so hard I thought I would pass out. I needed to tell someone, to report this, but the police would not care. I had read stories about this, people going to the authorities and getting nothing but empty promises. I decided to contact the site where the photos were posted, demanding they be taken down. But when I refreshed the page, a new message appeared at the top of the thread. A reply from the original poster. 3 words, "We see you." My body froze. I had never felt a fear so complete, so paralyzing. My phone buzzed. A notification from an unknown number. It was a photo of me sitting in my room right now, my face pale, eyes wide with terror. I spun around, searching the corners of my room, looking at my webcam, my windows. How were they seeing me? I turned off all my devices, unplugged my laptop, shut off my phone, but I knew it was too late. They were inside my life now, inside my home, inside me. I barely slept that night, and when I did, I woke up gasping for breath, feeling watched, feeling like someone was right there, just beyond my vision. The next morning, I went to a cyber specialist, someone who dealt with the dark web. I showed them the page, the messages, the photos, hoping they could trace it, find who did this. They looked at me with something close to pity and told me the worst thing I could hear. These people were professionals. They did not just find photos, they created them. They used artificial intelligence to generate realistic images, placing my face in situations I had never been in. The pictures of me sleeping, walking, even undressing, they were not real, but they were real enough to destroy me. They told me it was impossible to erase it completely, that once something spreads on the dark web, it never disappears. I left their office feeling like a ghost, like I had already died, but my body was still moving. My phone remained off, my laptop untouched, but the damage had been done. A week passed, then another, and the messages stopped. The posts slowed. Maybe they had moved on to someone else. Maybe they had found a new victim. I started to breathe again, started to feel normal, until the day I stepped out of my apartment and saw it. A printed photo taped to my door. It was me from yesterday, sitting on my couch, smiling at my television, unaware. The message below was handwritten, messy, rushed. "You are never alone." I did not sleep that night. I did not sleep the next. They had stopped posting online, but they had not stopped watching. The dark web is just a shadow, but shadows exist because something is standing in the light. I am the light. You are the light. And they are still watching. These are true dark web horror stories from Reddit, told by those who barely escaped. Whispers in anonymous chat rooms, strange sights that won't let you leave, and encounters with the truly unexplainable. If you think you're safe behind a screen, think again. Listen closely, but remember, some doors should never be opened. If these stories send chill down your spine, then hit the subscribe button. Tell us your most scary story about dark web